Hi guys, Summer Xia here. Welcome to China Innovation Decoded, an interview-based podcast about innovation and founder insights in China, brought to you by Microsoft for Startups Shanghai. Whether you're looking for inspirations, stuck at your startup, or would like to learn about how Chinese factories transform under the age of digitalization, this will be a great episode for you. Today, our guest is Yuxiang Zhou, CEO and founder of Blacklake Technologies. Like other Ivy League graduates, Yuxiang started his life after graduation on Wall Street.
So I was helping a lot of Chinese companies going to Germany, Australia, Canada, etc. to buy factories.
However, when Yuxiang visited a German factory as part of a job doing M&A at Barclays, he soon realized the gap between Chinese factories and German factories and decided it's time for a change.
I was fortunate to see and compare the differences between Chinese factories and the Western ones. Mm-hmm. I still remember for one of the deals, I was helping a large state-owned company to acquire a spin-off asset from ZF. It's an automobile components company. And when I was during the due diligence on behalf of the clients, the clients shared a lot of insights when we brought them to the Frankfurt factory in Germany. Mm-hmm. They were surprised by how advanced and sophisticated the digitization level of the factory they were about to acquire. They were not surprised at all by their equipment. They were not surprised by their skills of production. They were not surprised by the sophistication of the products. But they were surprised because on the plane to Frankfurt, they recently are making a campaign within the factory in China, which they call management by walking around. So they think it's a very superior concept of a factory management. So they send their middle management to do rounds every hour or every 2 hours at the different assembly lines, different workshops. So they have to physically go to different sites, inspect machine production, and try to discover a problem and then to solve the problem. But when we were at the Frankfurt factory, there were barely anyone on the shop floor. Middle management were just sitting in their office in front of a screen or monitor, and the problems, incidents will be pushed to their screen. So most of their time were not spent on discovering problems, but rather than solving them. Mm-hmm. So, when they compare their management by walking around concept with what they saw in Germany, they were quite shocked. And for me, I just took it as a great learning opportunity. Mm-hmm. I really saw the gap between German factories and Chinese ones. Right. And I believe one day Chinese factories will improve themselves to become closer to the level of digitization like what we saw in Frankfurt.
When Yuxiang decided to take a job in private equity and started investing into the very hot tech companies such as JD.com and Ganji on behalf of a sovereign fund of Canada, he saw that the consumers in China are so well served and there's so much innovation and improvements in the consumer sector. However, there is barely any innovation in the enterprise sector. In the factories, people still use pen and pencil to document everything. And this is the time when Yuxiang finally decided to quit his job in private equity and join his two very close friends in high school in Beijing.
We moved back to Beijing together in 2015 May, I believe. But at that time, we were just, three overseas students from China and returning back to China. We didn't understand Chinese market at all, but we just, we believe in technology. We believe by bringing those cutting-edge technology back in China, we can make a difference. But that was kind of a beginning of a failure because we didn't do any market research. We just believe, the technology that Palantir adopts in analyzing data or LinkedIn adopts to drive their user growth. We can mobilize them into the enterprise space in China. So we locked ourselves up. We raised money very quickly because with our background, a lot of venture capitalists or angel investors who were quite interested and quickly injected some funding into our company. So after we raised the money, and we kind of just locked ourselves up in a courtyard in Beijing and spent about 4 months doing product development. At that time, we want to build this really cool data analytics platform, all the way from ETL to data warehouse to visualization to dashboards and to analysis. But the beginning of the failure is that we didn't do any market analysis. So after 4 months, we built this really cool product. I still think it is, even by today's standard, in the big data or data analytics space. And then we started selling the product. So we brought this product to e-commerce companies, to finance companies, and they were already well served. They have some local vendors producing similar products for them at a much cheaper price. I think our products are much better, but they are quite price sensitive. So we started thinking about, why not move ourselves into a market where there's less competition. So naturally, with my previous job in investment banking, I thought manufacturing sector might be the one. So we try to sell our data analytic product to a bunch of large-scale factories in China. But they surprised us even more. When we visited the factory, try to sell them this product, I remember one of the factory owner just showed me around in the on the shop floor. There's no data. There's no data in the database. Everything is documented with a pencil or pen on paper forms. They may have ERP, but the granularity of data in the ERP system is not appropriate for data analytics or even making predictions at all. So at that point of time, we started to realize that we didn't do enough research of the market. We didn't understand the market well enough. So this product might be a bit of ahead of time or ahead of people's real demands. So it was quite a frustrating experience. When we all quit our job, moved into this courtyard, barely making income, and the products barely is not going anywhere. There's no client trying to wanting to buy it or pay for it. So we were faced up with 2 options. One is quickly shut down the company and move back to what we were originally doing. I already got a hedge fund offer then, and they already got approached by HRs from Silicon Valley. So that would be a very safe move, and that would be the conclusion of the failure. But the second option was to keep pivoting your product and try to find product market fit and try to generate real value for accommodating the real needs or real demands of the market.
Is that when you started doing more market research or like analysis?
No, I decided to climb Kilimanjaro because these 2 options were. It's hard. It's a hard decision. I thought I already invested 1 year of my time in Beijing and tried to start this company. If I just give it up, then the 1 year of time will just go into waste.
Right.
But I couldn't make a decision. The hedge fund offer was quite appealing. So I decided I bought a ticket to Kenya and just climbed the Kilimanjaro for 8 days. During the course of the trekking or climbing, it was quite hard because we took the harder route. It was on the summiting day, I realized that, doing any startup is just like climbing a mountain. It's at the end of the day, it's really up to your persistence, your willingness to keep going that will eventually lead you to the peak of the mountain.
So you had an epiphany there.
Yeah, a little bit. So when I got down the mountain, I called my partners. We were like, why don't we keep going? And since, we came back, we built this really nice data tool, but it's ahead of the market. But through visiting the factories, we realized maybe digitization is what they really need right now. And then the next step could be what we already built, the data tool. So we started thinking about, how, when we made this decision, we want to keep going. So then the next question is how? How can we be different from what we originally did, and how can we understand the market better? And our approach was just completely different from what we were eventually doing. Just, we researched product online and then build that in the courtyard. In the second project, we decided we want to be workers at the factories so that we can understand what their everyday work is like and how can we be a part of a driving force to change the way they document data, the way they analyze data. So with that complete shift in our methodology or approach of doing the company, we decided we want to be workers. And then lucky enough, I had friends working in private equity, and they acquired some factories in China in early 2016. And so I called my friends. Can you make an introduction for us into this factory? We just want to be intern workers at different assembly lines. And the friend was very helpful, and we got as unqualified workers, we got offer to those factories. It was a factory based in Suzhou, China, the coastal province in East China. The factory makes plastic packaging for famous cosmetic brands in the world like L'Oreal, Avon, etc. It's a very large factory. Their annual capacity was around 5 billion RMB. It's a large factory. So we believe, if they still have struggle with digitization, then their problem must be common and universal to even smaller scale factories. So we work as workers. Myself, I worked as an intern worker at...
So three of you?
I was the one actually taking the hard job, and they were the ones... two of them went to some factories, but most of the job was to architecting the system, etc., based on my feedback. So I myself worked as plastic injection, at the plastic injection line, and assembly line, warehouse, material transfer, etc. It's, as I mentioned before, when I was in investment banking, I was helping this Chinese company acquire the German one, and they were talking about management walking around. And this concept still existing in early 2016, at this factory in China, Suzhou, that I was working at.
So you're walking around all the time?
No. I didn't have the luxury. I was a worker. I was at the very bottom level.
Okay.
So, but my managers were walking around all the time and going through the stacks of paper forms that all the workers try to do the bookkeeping. So all the figures, your hourly production, your defect rates, your defect category, your machine accidents, machine parameter, everything. We spend a lot of time writing things down, and the middle management just walk around and inspect our paper forms, try to find irregular activities, and based on regular or irregular data, they then try to coordinate the work. And there's a lot of problem in this. First, that wastes a lot of my time. My salary or the other worker's salary was based on the quantity of products you produce per day. So you spend time documenting those data. A lot of time we're not producing. And the second, those data were on paper forms. Sometimes they were not accurate. And most of the time, all of them were not in time. So the response to certain incidents can only happen after the middle management see irregular data. And there's a gap in time anywhere between half an hour to 2 days before action could be taken to address certain problems. And just to use an example, every day I will receive paper slips telling me at what time to start which machine to producing what kind of products. And for example, this slip told me at 9 o'clock you need to start this machine. So I did as I was told. But then there's no raw materials coming to my assembly line sometimes. It's because last night, the prior production line before me, they were not producing because their machine was experiencing an incident or something. So, but I did not know this because
so it dragged down the whole production.
That dragged down the whole production, and at 9 o'clock I started my machine, and the machine was running there but producing nothing because there's no raw material. All the problems can be rooted back to we produce based on what we were told by paper or by human beings. And there's no concept of coordination or collaboration, digital collaboration, or digital information transfer happening on the shop floor. Everything is spoken, everything is on paper, everything is in a such inefficient manner. So I was quite inspired, and I that confirmed what the problem is, what problem we're trying to solve, and these are real problems.
Right.
And the companies obviously want to get rid of those problems, so they can produce more, they can be more agile, they can be more responsive to the market demands. And this is the first thing I saw. And another thing is quite interesting is in the evening we stay at the workers' dorms together with them. And we work about 12 hours a day, and usually at 7 o'clock we had our dinner. And after dinner, the factory was located in nowhere. There's no entertainment, there's no TV. But what surprised me was that all the workers, they purchased quite advanced models of smartphones.
Oh.
Because they love playing mobile games. They love playing Clash of Clans. They love playing. They love doing. In 2016, online streaming was quite popular in China. So they love like apps like Yinke, etc., to broadcast themselves online.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
And some of them even opened up stores on Taobao to help their families in the countryside to sell agricultural products in the evening.
Was it quite shocking to you? Like surprising?
That was quite shocking because my phone was iPhone Model 5 and their phone was already iPhone Model 6. And their salary was probably around 4,000 or 5,000 RMB per month. So they saved every penny to have this really good device so they can have their entertainment, their, in their personal life other than work. That was quite shocking because when I was in Hong Kong doing investing, we read Merrymaker report every year, and there's an important section in the Merrymaker report is always talking about Chinese smartphone penetration level, reach 75%, reach 80%. But when you're actually in the factory dorm and saw those workers advance better smartphones than yours, you were confirmed. This is happening. This was happening. So
they're pretty proficient at using them as well, right?
Yeah, and that inspired me in another way that in the daily working setting, you see the workers work on a really, really old-fashioned way, use paper, use pencil. But in their daily life, they use Alipay to pay, they use Taobao to buy stuff, etc. So suddenly a very interesting idea just came into my mind. When we talk about digitization for factories, historically all seems very hard, and there were a lot of failure with the proposal from traditional industrial software companies, because they always have a methodology, they have their whole set of hardware and software, and they have their best practice. So when they want to implement a digitization system at a factory, it's always it's like building a pyramid. It's a very difficult and costing task that involves all levels of management and workers, and it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of customization, etc. So I was just thinking, why not leverage on their existing familiarity with a smartphone and leverage on that to make smartphone apps to allow the workers maybe just instead of bookkeeping using pencil and pen, but rather use an app to scan, to click, to taking photos, taking video, to digitize. So it was a crazy idea, but we believed in it, and we actually wrote down the first line of our code at the factory. So we use a very simple framework, the Meteorite, and very quickly we developed an MVP version of the product that we envisioned. And we did A/B testing. So for one line, we asked all the workers to use this app, which helps them to receive data, helps them communicate, and help them to do bookkeeping. And when there's incidents, they can report it through this app digitally. And if there's a quality incident, they can take picture of the actual defective products. So people do not need to walk to the site to make a decision. They can just remotely receive those information and make a decision in the office or at another assembly line. With this very simple app, after the A/B test, the other line was not using, just they work as they used to. So we did a survey. We asked the 2 lines of workers and management, did our app make a difference? Of course, they complain a lot. It's a 2-week product. Like, user interface design was not done well at all. Sometimes they couldn't click a button. But overall, at the end of the day, based on data, we see they're actually producing more. The lines that are using our product. So we gained a lot of confidence.
You mean they're more efficient?
They're more efficient. They're producing more compared to the other line that was not using our very primitive MVP product. So we gained a lot of confidence because we were quite frustrated from the previous project. But now we realize it's a small thing. It's nothing. It's not sophisticated at all compared to the big data tool that we built. It's just a very simple app. But the workers, they loved it because they make more money. They produce more, they get paid more. And the factories are also happier because their capacity utilization rate is higher. That means their in fixed assets are producing more with our software. So very quickly, the angel investors for our first project, I don't know from whom they heard about us working as workers in the factory and did this A/B testing. They just do not tell any other investors we'll be your angel investors. So we quickly completed our first round fundraising, and we moved the team from a courtyard in Beijing to Shanghai, because our very primary goal of funding the second company is to help factories to actually innovate and become better. In China, there are 2 types of factories. There's a first type of factory that's the state-owned ones. They were owned by the government. And the other ones are the private sector. So for the SOEs, their main KPI is not necessarily profitability or capacity utilization rate. They could be solving employment rate, solving employment for the local government, etc. So, and these factories were mainly based in northern China. And for the private sectors, they were based in coastal regions like Shanghai, Yangtze River Delta, and also the Pearl River Delta in Guangdong. And their KPI are very straightforward. Produce more efficiently, and produce at lower cost.
There are always so many reasons behind a success story. When we think about the reasons of Black Lake's success, we might reach a conclusion that they are successful because they have a dedicated and dynamic team with experience in the field. And when they saw the gap between German factories and Chinese factories, they decided to act on it. But there's more to it behind the story.
I think if 10 years ago, if we tried to sell Black Lake's product to the factories back in the days, I don't think no one would pay for us.
Okay.
Because back then, since China joined WTO in 2002, the story following that for the next 2 decades was top-line growth. Because China joined this, global supply chain, so we became the world factory, and import-export been rocketing and doubling every year. So the story for factories then was to make more sales every year. No one was talking about efficiency. No one was talking about cost. Because as long, even the margin is not optimized, but as long as the profit is, the absolute number was growing, the factory owners were happy. But since 2012, the cost, especially the labor cost for manufacturing sector in China, has been steadily increasing or even doubling. Take factory in Sichuan, for example. A typical worker's salary in 2012 was around 3,000 RMB per month. And today, the number has already been increased to 6,000 to 7,000, and even 10,000 for some highly skilled roles. So with the labor cost rocketing, and also the top-line growth has been a bit sluggish since the great financial crisis in 2008. Then factories in China were forced to think about, as my sales were not growing anymore, how can we maintain a healthy margin by reducing the cost and by allowing the existing workforce to produce more. or if the sales is not growing at all, by how to implement new technology to reduce the current workforce. So it's really in the recent 3 to 5 years that Chinese factories became aware of efficiency and costs.
How many years do you think like Chinese factories will catch up for the foreign ones, or like Chinese factories now has a new model of innovation that may be applicable to other factories like elsewhere in the future?
I think they're already catching up. Well, if they're using blacklist products, they're already caught up. And in fact, I think I shared the anecdote about how I saw this Chinese company visiting Frankfurt factory. They saw their digitization levels quite high. But I can declare today that our product is already better than what we saw in Frankfurt. Because in Frankfurt, it was still in the age of PC, so all the software based on PC. But it's a bit of anti-intuitive if you are doing the collaboration software, but it's still on PC. But how do you collaborate?
Right.
But with Blacklist product, we are on IoT devices, we're on smartphones, we're on tablets. So it's quite mobile. They're all mobile devices. So the workers, when they walk around, when they produce, when they transfer materials, they can immediately receive data, they can immediately consume data, and they can immediately take action based on data. So I would say like we're already better than them.
But do you think this will be China-specific? As we talked about before, we know that China mobile penetration is very, very high.
Yeah, I think this will be China-specific because I had a summer vacation in Italy in the past summer, and I saw people are still using the black and white screen phones instead of smartphones in China. But it's a miracle. Well, the kind of consumer sector laid a good foundation for us that all the workers are already quite familiar with how to operate a smartphone. So their learning curve for our system is not steep at all.
So you wouldn't push your Blacklick products to like other factories?
You mean like
outside
China? There are some investment institutions that are talking with us, like from Singapore or from Saudi Arabia. They want to invest in us so that they can expand our product to maybe change
overseas,
the way they produce in Southeast Asia, etc. That would definitely be our future goal. But currently, I think China is the world's factory center. We already have, based on 2016 figure, we have about 400,000 factories that are producing over 20 million RMB per year annual capacity. So it's a quite large base, and we don't believe we're nearly done enough in China. So China is a huge market for us. So in the short term, we will still, as a startup, we have an interest. So we still focus on Chinese market for now.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Really enjoyed our conversation.
No problem. Thank you for coming to our company and hosting this program.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.